Okay, so today I want to talk about caring for one another. We all need care. That's what we are designed for. That's how we are made, created. And when you look at the Old and New Testament, God was always a God of restoration throughout the whole Bible. In the Old Testament, tens of thousands of people were killed because they turned away from God. And he said again and again, "Come to me, I will guide you, follow my laws, and I will keep diseases from you. You will win every war." He gave them a lot of promises of what would happen, but they always turned away from him. Out of the 42 kings in the Old Testament, I think there were maybe just 2 or maybe 3 that were godly kings. The rest were all wicked. That's interesting, isn't it? First of all, God wasn't going to give them kings. That wasn't his plan. He wasn't going to guide them himself. But then they begged for kings, and God gave them kings. And almost all of them were wicked. They were so wicked that they would slaughter their babies and sacrifice them to their false gods. That was really bad. And that several did that. But God always called them back, and sometimes they'd be in exile for a while, but then he'd call them back and give them another chance. And so as I sat there in my office this last week, and I just prayed, God, what is the most important thing for me to share this morning? I had something in mind, but what was the most important? And this thought immediately came to my head. I want you to tell them the importance of walking with one another in hardships. Not judge, but help carry the load and share the pain. So this is a key reason why we're doing life groups, because there is no way that this church can give you what you need as a maturing a person who is growing constantly in the Lord. There's no way that this church on Sunday morning in 1 hour can get you what you need. You need to walk with people as iron sharpens iron, so we walk with one another. And there isn't a single person that I can't learn from in this audience. Not one. I learned from everyone and have learned from so many of you already. Just going back into history a little ways at least, when we moved here in 1976, there were a lot of churches everywhere, and most of them are still standing, but they're empty. And going back a bit further, there were even some more. And you go along almost any road in this area, you will find a little church. They're often small churches, maybe 30, 50 people. But that's how they used to do church. They would all gather their area, and they did life together. There was no church like this back then. They were all smaller churches. And they did community together. And I can't help but think that maybe that was a good idea. Back then, they didn't have cars when these churches first started 120 years ago. So they would horse and buggy, and they all had to be close together so they wouldn't need to travel too far. I remember my grandpa telling me how they lived in Rosenort, how they go to Winnipeg with the horse and buggy, and they would heat up this stone and put it on the buggy and under the blanket. They would kind of keep warm. And some of them even had to stay overnight going to Winnipeg because it was so far. And so it was a different world. It's a completely different world. They lived in a local world. Now we live in a global world. We know everything about every place, it seems. We know what's happening in Iran on a minute-by-minute basis almost, and it's complicated. It makes your head busy. We don't even want to watch news anymore because it stimulates you too much. You don't need that. But today we have the cars. We can go anywhere we want. We can go visit anyone we want. We have the phones. We can call people all day long. You have WhatsApp. You have Instagram. You have everything. You can be in contact with 100 people a day easily. I will often call 30 people a day. It's easy. You have the phone. Back then, they couldn't. But I think they were more connected than we are. Just because we're a lot of people doesn't mean that we're connected. So life groups is something that we're really going to push this year. I just remember when we moved here, my dad was a pig farmer, and we would buy these little piglets from different farms. I would say probably between 5 and 10 little farmers where we'd buy these piglets. And of those little farms, I don't know a single one that is still standing. They've all closed. Now we have a few large farms, thousands of pigs. It's just a different lifestyle. I remember going with my dad in half-ton, had little boards on the side, and we would go pick up these little piglets, and we would go to the farmer would come out, and we would talk, and we'd go look at the pigs, and what's the price, and what size do you want, and how many do you want, and write a check. It took half an hour to pick up 10 pigs. It was a different life. But there was more community that connected. We knew that by name, these farmers who had these pigs. And today you have a semi-truck coming on the yard and you load hundreds and hundreds of pigs and you don't even know where they're going, who's buying them. It's a different world, right? Discipleship is kind of like these small churches and these small pig farms, if you will, where we do life together. We walk with one another. We make decisions together, and that's why we're pushing the life group so much, because we realize that this setting on a Sunday morning will not give you what you fully need. We need each other very much. And like I said before, I can get insight from every single one of you. I don't care what your age is. Every single one of you, I can learn from you. And I've learned so much. And I've been absolutely amazed sometimes what I am missing. I think I have this figured out. And then one person makes a little comment. I say, oh, never thought of that. Completely different viewpoint. So we need one another all the time. I've been wrong so many times already where I thought I had something figured out and I was missing a major piece of the story, but I didn't know it. Someone else had to come and tell me that piece of the story. I would have been on the wrong path completely. It's so humbling sometimes to realize that you were so wrong. So we need each other. We have blind spots, big-time blind spots. My wife will tell you I have a lot of blind spots. And she can make one statement, and I might even resist it. But she's often right in that one little statement. So this morning I want to use these Lego bricks as an example. You all know this is a Lego brick. You've all seen it. You probably all have some at home. But one single Lego block has really no value. I would throw it out. But if you have a whole bunch of them, now you can create something. Do you know that 600 billion Lego blocks have been made since 1958 when they started? 600 billion. Not million, billion. Last year alone, they made between 60 and 70 billion blocks. They're really ramping up. So they've realized that if people have a lot of these, and the more they have, the more they can build. And I liken that to our small groups. One person alone will only be limited in what they can achieve. We need each other. We need other people for input into our lives to grow and become strong and become balanced. So just like one brick alone can't grow and be a healthy, vibrant building, just like Lego bricks, we need each other so much. So we as people, we think we know everything, but we don't. And when I prepared the message, this word synergy came into my mind multiple times. Synergy means if I can build one house, then two can build 5 houses. If two can only build 5 houses, then there's no synergy. There's no advantage. But when two can do a lot more than double of what one could do, that's synergy. And I believe when people get together and they talk and they discuss and so forth, it's a synergy that happens. Proverbs 11:14 says, where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. So Pastor Abe is doing a series on the fruits or the gifts of the Spirit. And I came across the one verse that I think that he mentioned last Sunday where he said he gave some apostles, prophets, evangelists, and pastors and teachers. And it says for the equipping of the saints. And then verse 14 says, then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. And then verse 16. This is my verse I wanted to talk about a bit. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly, as each part does its own special work. So each of you do your own special work. You don't have to have any position. You don't have to have any schooling. Did you know that Elijah in the Bible had no schooling? I don't know if he could even read. He came from a town that nobody knew where it was. He was a nobody. And yet he used that man, which is the prophet that we talk about the most. So each part does its own special work. It helps the other parts grow, so that the whole body is healthy and growing in full love and full of love. So the small groups are there to help us grow in a balanced way. I was going to show you a picture, but I couldn't find it quickly. When we were in Oregon here this summer, we went to the beach or the ocean, and there was a tree that was bent over real bad. And you could see the wind from the ocean had been blowing very, very often and very hard. The whole tree was leaning over. The whole leaves, it looked weird. But it didn't grow in a balanced wind from every side, only from the one side. So I'd like to look a little bit at Galatians 6 this morning. These are my main verses. Galatians 6 verse 1 says, Paul says, brothers, if anyone is caught in any sin, you who are spiritual, that is, you who are responsive to the guidance of the Spirit, are to restore such a person in a spirit of gentleness, not with a sense of superiority or self-righteousness, keeping a watchful eye on yourself so that you are not tempted as well. Anyone, any sin. Think about that. He's talking to a church here, right? To believers. So caring for one another. How do we care for one another? So this tells us you who are spiritual. So when it comes to helping one another, we would normally all say that I'm not the right person. I don't know how to do that, or I don't have the training for this, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to take the time. But it says those who are spiritual have a connection with the Holy Spirit, and they can help them. So are we spiritual? Are we people that are willing and look for opportunities to help? We often hear a statement, well, it's their fault. They created that scenario. That's for them to deal with. If anyone, any sin, you who are spiritual, help them. I want to stress that point this morning. Are we willing to help them? Even though you might say, well, I warned them, and they still did it. What if you did, and they still did it? Are your hands then free? Like, can we then walk away and say, no, that's on me. I don't need to worry about that? At what point can we walk away? At what point? It says restore them in gentleness, with a positive attitude. Be very careful that you're not self-righteous. Restore them. And then verse 2 it says, carry one another's burden, and in this way you will fulfill the requirements of the law of Christ. That is the law of Christian love. So this word carry is the one that I looked into the most. And it sounds like, yeah, so how do we carry one another? If I say, okay, I'm going to pray for you. Does that carrying one another? Or I'm going to give you a call next week. Is that carrying one for one another? It might be. But this word actually means something totally different. It says, be willing to get in the trenches and walk with them in the mess. So if someone has done something, sinned, you're willing to go into the trenches, get dirty with them, lock arms, and walk out of the hole. That's what this means. Carry them. How many of us are willing to get dirty? It might take a day. It might take a week, month, year, 5 years. I don't know how long it will take. But to lock arms and say, I'm going to walk with you. See where we can go together. Not because I want to, but because we carry one another's burdens. Are we willing to get dirty? They may say, well, you're carrying too much. You should let that person go. I've tried and he doesn't want any help. Or at what point can we walk away? I believe there is a time when we pull back. But at what point can we conscientiously or with a free conscience say, not my responsibility? At what point? And you might say, well, he's done that before. No, I'm not going to help him again. At what point? At what point do we just walk away? When we carry another burden, that means literally lifting some weight of that sin. I kind of own it, what my brother did. And I walked with them. Even if it's going to tarnish your name. So let's use an example. Let's say financially. Let's say you have someone in this community or in your realm of influence that is doing really badly financially. If you are able to help someone like that or walk with them, why wouldn't you? At what point do we say, well, everybody has to find their own way? I'm a self-made whatever, and they have to be there. At what point do we lock hands and say, I'm going to walk with you? Or do we just say, well, he's a different, he's never going to amount to anything. He's poor, he will never. At what point do we lock hands? Say, let's figure this out together. We're not sure how. Last week, there was one person that needed some help, and I said, I'm not the right person for that person. So I called another person, another country. I said, there's a person in your area that needs this kind of help. Could you do that for this person? Can I suggest this person to call you? And they sent a message back, yeah, I would be glad to help them with that. Okay, so I said, they will call you. I may not know how, but I know who can. We all know people who are able to help one another. We shouldn't too quickly say, well, I don't know how to do it, so I'm free, I'm just backing off. If you were in the hole, wouldn't you wish someone would get in the hole with you and lock arms and walk out of the hole? I think we all would. And here's the key. If you can do that without gossip, without belittling that person, then you will be successful. You don't have to be an Einstein. You really don't. What we've done so badly in church in the last my lifetime is where we've sometimes try to help someone, but then that word got spread around that person needs help or that person is really not doing well. Something we need to just shut our mouth and just help that one person. Don't tell a single person. No one. Just zip it up. Because you can destroy that person so fast. I can give you a list of people on my hands that have come to me and said, I will never talk to a pastor again. Because I did once, and he talked to everybody else. I will never talk to a pastor again. That's what happens when we're not careful. If you want to be really successful in helping people, learn to zip your mouth and just walk with them. Don't make them feel like a nobody. They are somebody, just like you think you are. Verse 3 says, and if anyone thinks he is something special, when in fact he is nothing special, except in his own eyes, he sees himself. Okay, this just giving us a picture that we tend to elevate ourselves above the other people. Yeah, they need help, but I know how to do that. Well, if that is the case, then I should go and help them. It's obviously a problem, or else I wouldn't mention that so much. So self-examination is very key. Verse 4 says, but each one must carefully scrutinize his own work, examine his actions, attitudes, and behavior. And then he can have the personal satisfaction and inner joy of doing something commendable without comparing himself to another. See, we sense it very quickly if someone is looking down on us. We sense it very quickly. And if you're a millionaire and someone has nothing, can you step down to their level and say, I'm going to walk with you. I'm going to teach you how. Without them making them feel stupid or a nobody. That's where the kingdom of God is most accurately shown. It says, then we will fulfill the law of Christ. And reading through the New Testament, there's times when I wonder, we think salvation and accepting Christ is the key thing, and I think it is. But it keeps saying that loving one another is Jesus' first commandment, a new commandment. Loving one another as I have loved you. By this all men will know you my disciples by the way you love one another. It almost seems like the fruit of true repentance is in loving one another, in caring for one another. Verse 5, for every person will have to bear with patience his own burden or faults and shortcomings for which he alone is responsible. So the whole 5 verses are very much caring, but be careful how you care. Be careful that you don't do it in a prideful or self-righteous manner. Be very sure that your attitudes are correct. So what would it look like if this whole church did that? What would that look like? If we all looked and said, who can I care for this year? The women are having their secret society apparently, but the rest of us. So how can we, as men, how can we pick one person? Or you younger youth, you can do it too. Everyone can. Pick one person and say, I'm going to lock arms with you. It might take a week, it might take a month or a year, doesn't matter. But we're going to find someone that I can show my love to in response to my salvation. I think that's how our love is shown with people. Ask the team to come up for a closing song. When this woman was caught in adultery and brought to Jesus to be stoned, Jesus says, he who is without sin. He didn't say he who hasn't committed adultery. He said he who is without sin. So he went much deeper than just having committed adultery. And they all walked away. I would have walked away too. I think we would have all walked away. But with that mindset, I'm no more. If I know something they don't, and I can lock arms with them and walk with them, that doesn't put me above them. It just makes me right in doing what God has asked me to do. Let's pray. God, I thank you that you're so merciful to us. You have so much patience with us. And you have given all of us so many gifts, so many abilities. You've given us wisdom. And Lord, I pray you would teach us how to use our gift or talents or abilities to love one another somehow on this earth. that we would actually take time and look and see who can I bless for the next period of time, and how can I, maybe it's financially, maybe it's spiritually, maybe it's physically. How can I help them? And Lord, teach us what it means to love like you loved. Teach us what it means to be humble, have the right attitude in helping others. You tell us in your word, Lord, that by this will all men know that we're your disciples, by the way we love one another. Lord, let that sink into us this morning. And like you said, a new commandment is that we love one another as you've loved us. Lord, may we not go through life and miss loving one another, caring for one another, carrying a load with someone or for someone. God, you've given us a lot of people, a lot of giftings, a lot of talents, a lot of knowledge, a lot of revelations in this house. May we be faithful with that and pass it on to one another.